Continuing.
Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. Today's lineup and what we got in store for you today shows exactly how upside down our cyber world has become. We got stories about ransomware crews hijacking emergency alert systems, retailers that are still paying ransom like it's 2016, and predictions for 2026 that sound like a sci-fi writer got bored and joined a security conference. And of course, joining me today is Randy and Andre, who will convince us that the future is bright, but it isn't, and we appreciate their optimism.
Wow.
We'll get into it. What's up, guys? How are you?
Hey. Great. How are you?
How was your Thanksgiving, Brian?
Oh, my God. Quick. Too quick.
Yeah, that's
really
the truth.
good, though. I smoked
That's
a turkey.
the truth.
And I smoked a turkey, and it was, like, amazing. I was, like, eating it, and I was like, man, I outdid myself on this one, so.
So down here in Texas, we deep fry turkeys. Have you ever had a deep fried turkey?
Dude, I'm off deep frying now. I did that for like fucking 10 years. Now I'm on other things. So
I'll have to show you my tofu turkey one day.
Oh yeah. All right, guys, this is an interesting one. Now, I wanted to talk about this code red ransomware that triggered a fake national emergency alert. This is a little one. This one's a little bit near and dear to my heart because I have a friend out there who many years ago, targeted this same system. And, as he was playing around with the equipment that's used in the emergency alert system and learning how easy it was to hack because it was just so old and so full of vulnerabilities. This is the same system.
Wow.
And it's kind of like the best way I can describe it is the system is just really old and they just keep slapping like updated front ends on it, but the back end still stays the same. So this group Code Red has been targeting public sector systems like this by exploiting unsecured alerting infrastructures. And the attack reported here, I'm going to actually throw it up on the screen. I've been forgetting to do that lately. Give me 1 second. There we go. Why does my screen keep switching? There we go. But yeah, I mean, the attack reported here in this story on the Register talks about what's known as CAP, or Common Alert Protocol channels. So the group uses stolen credentials, like similar stuff that we talk about, guys, all the time on this channel about how companies get hacked through VPNs, and these are just stolen credentials. Typically, they can steal these in this particular Code Red from third-party vendors that service the middleware in these systems, right? So like I said, these are old systems that communicate with new interfaces, and somebody builds something in the middle to make that work. And what we're finding out is that middleware either has poor security practices around it or hard-coded usernames and passwords into those systems that these guys can easily exploit once they get access to it. So analysts believe that the ransomware that is used here is deployed after pivoting from outdated middleware used by state emergency offices. So essentially, they know the vendor that created this middleware. They figured out all the vulnerabilities that it has, which means the amount of time that they need to strike is reduced tremendously. At the end of the day, all somebody needs to do is get access to a system like this, or give access to a system like this. We could talk about the different ways that can happen here in a minute, guys, but that's really all that needs to happen. Once somebody has access, you contact Code Red on the dark web, and they take over and deploy the ransomware and shut down the system. And this is one of those systems, guys, where when they go down, these guys get paid. They're now calling it software because these tactics create real world disruption and pressure, and similar events to what's happening here happened with the LA emergency alert system in 2023. And they found in 2024, researchers who looked into this found that more than 80 alert systems across the United States are still using these default passwords that I'm telling you are built into these systems. DHS, our cybersecurity wing of our federal government, flagged the emergency broadcast tools as a high risk due to legacy dependencies. So here we go with known vulnerabilities not being taken care of. These municipal governments sitting out there flapping in the wind, waiting for somebody to come along to exploit them. And this is probably going to be one of those topics that we talk about today that are going to lead into Randy's discussion at the end of the show. Like, this is the stuff that we are not doing a good job at. It seems like we might be stuck in the mud a little bit with progress, and the attackers are just progressing like they're going to the moon.
Yeah, I just don't see how there's no account. Like, if you have an application of software as important as Code Red, Crisis 24, how do you not just say, hey guys, we're just going to go ahead, and if there's known passwords that are just passwords or something easy, let's just go ahead and let's go through this whole process of changing it. And it also is interesting of the timeline. So they gained access November the 1st. Files got encrypted November the 10th. So that means that for 9 days, they were in their system without any recognition. And also, they started their ransomware demand at $950,000. They dropped it to $450,000, and Crisis 24 countered it with $100,000, and which they rejected. The ransomware group rejected. So, although how important this seems for us to make sure that, hey, let's get these systems back up and running for these counties and government uses, here we have Crisis 24 negotiating with them from 950 to 100.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And, Brian, I think I remember us actually discussing something around this and that person, either on a show like 3 years ago or in the green room. And if y'all remember, one of the first big attacks of the 2020s was a Kaseya attack. And what was it? It was, I'm going to give a layman's answer to it, but it was unsecured old stuff, basically. Now, I know it was a lot more deep than that, and they went in and fixed it, and they were relatively transparent about it and saved their reputation. But bottom line, we're going to talk about this later in the show, I know, so I won't harp here long, but bottom line, with AI being able to collaborate, dark web leaks, and other known information like default passwords, we're going to see this kind of stuff happening more and more. Back in 1999, well, actually starting about like 95, we started rewriting code. I worked at a company, had to rewrite an entire system for Y2K compliance, and we did that. We're going to have to rewrite stuff for AI and quantum and dark web leak compliance too, or else we're going to just see more and more of this kind of stuff.
We're going to see more and more kinds of this stuff because people refuse to do what they've been advised to do. And I'm actually going to pull that up right now. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find out exactly what DHS told them to do. So it's basically saying that the flaws are there, if they're left unpatched, a malicious actor can start to issue bogus alerts over radio, TV, or cable networks. They can hijack the alert system, push fake emergency messages. Additionally, once exploited, the attacker could, depending on the exact vulnerability available to them, lock out legitimate users, preventing real emergency response. So, like, that's the ransomware, right?
Right.
The people, the officials who are supposed to be using this system get locked out, and they won't get access until they pay.
And what date was that they gave this alert?
Give me 1 second. I have it right here. August 3rd, 2022.
August. Wow.
2022.
Oh, 20. Wow. Okay.
Yes. So 2022, as Randy said 3 years ago, that's probably when we kind of became aware of it. This was something that was talked about at, I want to say, Black Hat. I mean, this is known that this system is an issue and it's a problem, and we need to start getting rid of it and replacing it with something else across the country. It's crazy. Like 70-year-old people are not going to know that this stuff isn't coming from hackers. You know what I mean? Like that's the panic it creates. Like guys like you and me can look. Like, it was funny. Something in our personal life, the text chain that my wife is in, there was a conversation going on and a message came back, and it was just like made your head kind of turn a little bit. It was just like something along the lines of like, can we all work together to brainstorm this a little bit? And I was like, oh, that was an AI. Like somebody hit the AI thing on that. Like that person didn't really type all that out and say that, right? It was so evident that they just like clicked the AI thing and hit send, or mistakenly did it. But like at the end of the day, like somebody who uses AI is going to be able to pick up on that. Somebody who doesn't use AI is not even going to think about AI, right? So they're going to think that that person wrote that, right? And same situation here. People who aren't like tech savvy aren't going to think that some dude commandeered the system and started sending out fake messages to them. So, that's the risk here. And when somebody has these systems commandeered, it's not good. And I can see why these municipalities pay up pretty quickly.
And one thing too, Douglas County, Colorado, they terminated the contract. So once they found out that they were down and there was a vulnerability, they said, hey, we're moving on to somebody else. So how many other companies right then and there decided, we're just not going to wait for you guys to clean up your act?
Yeah, 100%. All right, Andre, 58% of retailers hit with ransomware pay up. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so this year has been the year. A lot of UK stuff. If you guys remember, Mark and Spencer, Co-op, Louis Vuitton, the Victoria's Secret. So we covered this a lot. But why I found this article interesting is because it kind of also relates to a lot of what's happening in the small business market, where it talked about, as you mentioned, X percentage of retailers are paying up, but also it talks about why. So some statistics that I liked here said that nearly half of retail ransomware, which is 46%, started from a security gap the company didn't even know existed. And as we just talked about the last article, and as we always talk about in the show, many times, most of the time, or at least half of the time, it's not that the hacker did some, MacGyver thing and creative way. It was because the door was left open. They didn't lock the door. They had an old door system or whatever the case is, but it could have been prevented. And then another statistic that I saw here was that it said that limited in-house expertise was the second most common operational driver of compromise. So what this is basically saying is that someone doesn't know what they're doing, they're lazy, they're incompetent, whatever you want to call it. But again, whoever's at the top, the IT director, the CISO, whoever is managing it, sometimes it's even departments that they just, like, we find that a lot with our clients, that the person that's like in charge of us in the sense of like contracts, getting updates and so forth like that. They know nothing about IT. It's just they were the one who decided to one day be the person to go in and unplug something, and then all of a sudden they were the designated IT contact for the IT vendor. So so that was kind of the top two things that I saw here that I wanted to talk about, because although this was talking about realtors, not real, what's the word? Sorry. English is my single language. Retailers. I don't know if you guys know that, but retailers. But yeah, so but basically I found that there was a common trend between that and the small business. Take it away, Randy.
Well, I'm just I was shocked to see the statistic. And I know that this is not an industry either that's putting a lot of money into cybersecurity, or B, so we've seen like the small mom and pop shops don't want to spend any money or can't spend any money. And when you start looking at the bigger chains, a lot of times their AI is handled by some corporate AI group, that's not really doing anything about cybersecurity. So this is pretty crazy. It should be a wake-up call for people in this industry.
Yeah.
But it won't be. But, I like to think that it would be.
Yeah. Oh, the truth of the matter is retail pays because retail builds networks that collapse like a cheap tent. Mm-hmm. I mean, if your point of sale system is talking to your file server, which is talking to your HVAC system that's connected to the internet, you've basically already volunteered to be a victim, because you're putting points of vulnerability, systems that typically don't get patched too often, that have no vulnerabilities in them, right? So you want to segment these things up, right, until they figure out that running flat networks is when we talk on this show and we talk about IT companies, MSPs, IT departments that take shortcuts. Well, setting up a flat network in 2025 is a shortcut.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it, number one. And it leaves you vulnerable as hell if you have to run legacy systems, if you have to run something that's old and not getting updated anymore, right? I mean, quite frankly, like, we segment our network. We have a really old copier that I paid like $8,000 for. It works fine. I'm not getting a new one. They stopped updating the software for it. Well, guess what? I'm not going to go, because they stopped updating the software, go buy a new $8,000 copier when this thing works fine. We just segment it, and we don't allow, much access to it, right? We control the access. We know who's hitting it, and talking to it, and who's not, and it makes it really hard for people to exploit those things when you start to do stuff like that. So, any other thoughts? Any other advice around what retail can do besides segment network here, guys?
Yeah, another thing the article talked about was how a lot of it is because you have transitional employees or short-term employees. So training is always the big thing. Even if they're seasonal, they're only going to be here from November to January for the Christmas season or whatever the case is, but still make sure that you are implementing that culture, be it they're part-time, temporary, whatever, and train your employees. Hey, watch out for tech support scams, or if there's, if they have access to emails, be careful when you're clicking on the emails and things like that. Because, or even interns for the small business, if you have summer interns, make sure they're still getting training just like your normal employee would do as well.
Also, Brian, at the risk of getting chastised, I know this is a chastisement risk here, but I've had retailers ask me, and they're like, well, we don't have any money to spend. And, you can't just tell them, well, you're screwed. And so sometimes, you can, but sometimes we'll tell them, okay, switch to Chromebooks or switch just to iPads. You're using an online POS system, switch to something that's slightly more secure than a wide open Windows machine. And I know that that's a controversial take. And it's probably not advice I would say live on a podcast, but there you go. That's what some I've seen some real retailers do that. and put themselves in a slightly better position. So,
Cool.
yeah,
All right, Randy.
exactly.
So Randy wants to bring this article here. What lies ahead for security in 2026? Which I was checking out this article, Randy. Looks like it's a think tank panel from
Yes.
Computer Weekly. So it looks like it's a little bit of an opinion piece. So I'm interested to hear what angle you want to take on this one.
Give us the good news, Randy.
That's right. That's right. No, I've got thoughts on it already, and the reason that I went with it, we're starting to roll into 2026 right now, and a lot of companies, maybe their budgets are already done or whatever, but there's still a grim reality. We already said it at the beginning of the show, and we mentioned it in different ways, but a few things this article brings out. One is we've seen cuts over the past few years. We've seen cuts towards cybersecurity. We've seen less people being used in cybersecurity. And then what we're seeing because of that is more vulnerability for businesses in 2026. We even talked about it. The watershed moment, I want to say the watershed month for AI, I want to say was March of this year, maybe late February. It seemed like the whole world all of a sudden woke up to it. And we were worried. I remember in the green room talking, we might have talked about it on the show as well, about money getting shifted, from cybersecurity to AI. Well, whether or not that's why, whether it's the economy, whatever reason, going into 2026, we do see a reduction typically over the past 3 years for money spent on cybersecurity by businesses. We're seeing AI get used more in attacks and for defense as well. So that's one of the things this article mentions. Last week, we literally talked, it might have been 2 weeks ago, we literally talked about the first known AI-directed attack. The AI actually made 80 to 90% of the decisions in that attack that we talked about. So we're gonna see more of that. What does that mean, though? Like in the bigger picture, so we're seeing the bad guys using AI more. We're seeing the good guys, quote unquote, quote unquote on both, whatever. More quote unquote. Anyway, we're seeing the good guys use AI to counter, using AI more defensive. But then bigger picture globally, we're in an AI arms race. And because we are, we got to outdo China, and China's got to outdo us, and we got to outdo this country, and that country's got to outdo us. Because we're in an AI arms race, we have that potential for opening up more dangerous things because of that. And then the last part of this article that I want to mention, you guys probably already thought about this, but I, for whatever reason I have, and a light bulb went off in my head, oh gosh, that's really going to be a thing. So here's the thing. We've been seeing vibe coding, and what vibe coding is people that don't know how to code, using AI tools to generate code. Well, now what we're seeing is vibe breaching, where people that don't know how to code using AI to vibe code. I watched some videos on this, prepping for this. Wow. Mind blown. And it's an obvious thing. I should have even seen it before the article even brought it up. And they don't really call it vibe breaching or vibe coding or whatever, but I think that's going to be one of the trends that we're going to see. With AI, you basically can take up all the knowledge of the internet and crunch it down into this little brain. If you can poke it and prod it the right ways, you can get it to dump what you need. And if you can trick it or use a chat GPT or a bad GPT, if you can trick it or use one of those, you can get it to do malicious things. And we're going to see a lot more of that. So 2026 is wrapping up like it's going to be a wild ride, and we're going to see a lot of changes in this industry, and we're going into it woefully unprepared. Businesses are going into it woefully unprepared. That's basically the gist of the article. Might be an opinion piece, but that's my opinion on the opinion piece, Brian.
Do you agree with it?
I didn't agree with necessarily every single word, but I do know basically what I just shared just now, I think is going to be our reality as we move forward.
Andre?
What about
Yeah.
you, Andre?
So I know we're probably going to do our predictions for 2026,
Yeah.
Right.
but I do like what this article is talking about, especially when it comes to the amateurs and the vibe coding, as Randy was talking about. And you're going to have these teenagers who, the new teens now, about consequences, about doing things and not getting caught. Like I guess predict that we're going to see a lot of that now, them using those type of tools to think like, oh, wow, let me see if I can break into my school system, or, what kids do. And with no fear of consequences and using tools that they don't understand, I agree with the article that we're going to start seeing more of these type of attacks, but it's going to be more of the U.S. Population that are going to do these. And of course, as we can see, most of the time they don't even get consequences because they're juvenile and, records get expunged and things like that. But kids are bored. They're going to want some bragging rights, and it's going to be cool if they're able to do something like that. Brian, didn't you mention that one time with something with one of somebody in your school or something that you?
What's that?
No, Brian, didn't one time you mention something in your kid's school?
My kid.
Yeah.
Getting around that's all they do, dude. Is they get around the fucking firewalls in their school and play games.
Yeah.
That's like what they do in school, like half the day, it seems like. Okay, they put a new block up. How do we get around it?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like that's definitely sounds like stuff that goes on in my kid's school. I'm sure it goes on in other schools as well.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that's teaching them, right? That's teaching them how to circumvent systems, right? They're learning, no doubt. Hopefully they don't take that too far. That's a conversation I have with my son. It's like, don't think that whatever you're doing on that system doesn't have a log and isn't being traced and trackable. Like, just because you got around the system and you could play a game for 15 minutes doesn't mean they don't have the logs and you're not going to get caught. Like, that's how these things work. So, they don't have that perspective. They think, oh, I got around it. Nobody's going to catch me because they can't see what's on my screen. Right. Oh, these systems log everything, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah. Andre, when you were saying that, I was thinking kind of the same thing. Like that anonymity is more of an illusion. Especially for these, if they were young people that were doing it, that don't really have the connections to the criminal organizations that know how to cover tracks. You know what I mean? Like it's probably going to be pretty easy to find a lot of it, and they're going to make a lot of mistakes. So I would not suggest young people go into that. If you want to go into hacking, do it for the good guys.
Yeah. Or at least
the article, I thought it was interesting. In the beginning, it points out that, like, hey, for the last 2 years, companies, organizations have not been spending as much on cybersecurity and IT infrastructure upgrades. So, in other words, they're kind of saying that 2026 is going to be the perfect storm for cyber criminals. And I don't think we're going back to, and I agree with the assessment if it plays out that way. I don't think we're going back to maybe like 4 or 5 years ago when we just saw these like crazy ransomware attacks for millions of dollars, right? They just don't operate like that anymore. We talked about this a few weeks ago. They go after the targets that they know are going to pay and they leave everybody else kind of alone, right? They may get into your system and decide like, oh, this isn't worth it to us because we're probably going to have to spend 3 weeks on chat with them to even get them to even consider paying, right? They want people that are going to pay tomorrow. And they don't want people that are going to sit there and waste their time for 3 weeks, right? So, at the end of the day, they could pawn you off onto some other low-level criminal, and do something else with you. And I think the other part is I agree with you, Andre, that we are going to see an increase in the type of attacks that you described. And I do agree that you're going to see Americans involved in that. But I also think you're going to see people being completely victimized by people around the world. And I think that's worse because you can't really go after those people. So like there's going to be a lot of victims here in the US that are going to demand changes in how we treat digital crime and those types of things, because people are going to lose money. There's going to be real victims here that are going to be hurt as a result of what these cyber criminals can do and these scammers can do. And I think, yes, I think it's going to permeate here in the US, but I also think it's going to permeate around the world. And quite frankly, if you're a victim, you better hope they're in the US, because at least you got a better chance of justice. If they're not in the US, you can forget about it.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys, on this 2026 prediction?
Yeah, it's not our official predictions.
No.
Hopefully we'll do a show on those, or end of a show.
I just thought it was an interesting take. It's kind of the first time I've really heard an organization or a publication say that across the board cybersecurity spending's down for 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always been saying it, but I've never seen numbers or anything to back that up. I mean, I've seen tons of studies and they all contradict one another. So anything else? We all good?
All good. Yep.
All right. What's up, Luke? We had good Thanksgiving. Appreciate it from over the pond. You recognizing that holiday. He says there's a big daycare hack here earlier in the UK. Kids who did it were from the town I grew up in, and we're both 17. Yep. Wow. Seems like the UK has a lot of homegrowners that like to attack. Those Lapsus guys, where a lot of them were from the UK.
Yep.
So
there was literally one guy in someone's like in their mom's basement. Remember that? It was like one of the more sophisticated attacks, and it was a guy who was arrested in his parents' basement. Like,
that was the fall guy, man. That was the fall guy.
He didn't know for our podcast about conspiracy theories.
He just wanted his 20% cut.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, guys. Well, if that's it, we can wrap up the show here. So what did we talk about? We saw my article with the emergency alert system, basically held together with duct tape. We got Andre talking about retailers paying the ransomware because their networks are wide open and flat and just waiting for people to just exploit. And as a result of all that, the 2026 predictions from Computer Weekly are in, and they think that all the stuff that we talked about is going to end up causing a whole lot of problems next year. So none of this is slowing down. So if you want to stay ahead, focus on the fundamentals, make sure you're patching, make sure you're thinking about segmenting your networks, make sure you're thinking about putting some decent monitoring in place so you can react quickly. And let's stop pretending like these legacy systems will, continue to serve your business and continue to serve you because they're not going to protect you from next year's attackers. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe, like us where you can, leave a review, share it with someone who needs to hear this. We'd really appreciate it. It helps other people find this content when you do things like that. If you want to support the show directly, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/securitysquawk. Randy, Andre, and I will see you next week. Stay safe and take care.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.